Hi, let's talk a little bit about the Jewish holiday of Shavuot. Shavuot is a holiday that falls on the sixth day of the Hebrew month of Sivan, and it's known to many as the holiday where people stay up all night studying Torah and eat foods made with milk and cheese, like cheesecake and ice cream. But let's talk a little bit about the history of Shavuot and the meaning of Shavuot, and then we'll get to also why we eat cheesecake on Shavuot. The Bible tells us that between Passover and Shavuot, for 49 days, every day we have to count what's called the Omer. In Hebrew, it's called Sefirat Omer, the counting of the Omer. And that's because in ancient Israel, it was an agrarian society. And most people made their living through farming and working the land. And the time between Passover and Shavuot was the time when you harvest your grain, your barley, and your wheat. So in an ancient agricultural society, the entire year, if you want to make bread, you can't go to the store and buy flour, and you certainly can't go to the bakery and buy pre-made bread. You have to go down to your storehouse and take out the wheat that you have stored for the entire year. You grind up a certain amount and you prepare your bread. So the period of 49, 50 days between Passover and Shavuot, when the harvesting of the wheat and the barley was taking place, was a very labor-intensive time and also a very important time because you're really realizing the profit of work that you did for many, many months of sowing and plowing, sowing, and so on and so forth. And so on the 50th day, when all of that harvest was done, and we counted each day of the harvest, what's called the counting of the Omer, which was an offering of barley that was brought in the temple. On the 50th day, we would celebrate in the temple with a special sacrifice of the new grain that had been harvested for the year. And at that time, we could first eat of the new grain. The Torah prohibited us of eating from the new grain until after the Shavuot sacrifice was brought. Like it says, Yashad mipnei chadash tuotziu. You can take out now the old and bring in the new. What is the literal meaning of the word Shavuot? The word Shavuot means weeks, as in 7 weeks, because there is a 7-week period, Sheva Shavuot, between Passover and Shavuot, when we count the Omer. And so the name of the holiday, Shavuot, is the holiday of weeks. So that's one aspect of the holiday of Shavuot. It's an agricultural holiday. But there's a whole second aspect to Shavuot, and that's what we tend to focus on more today. And that is the fact that Shavuot is the day when God gives the Torah on Mount Sinai. That's the day when God spoke to every member of the children of Israel and said the words, Anochi Adonai Elohecha, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. And so today, when we reach the day of Shavuot, we focus primarily on the aspect that it's the day of the giving of the Torah. And so what you'll find in synagogues all around the world is that on Shavuot, people stay up the entire night studying Torah. And the reason for this is, first of all, because, of course, we're excited that it's a holiday of giving Torah and we want to prepare with lots of Torah study. But there is an ancient tradition, a midrash, that says that in the time when the Torah was given in the Sinai desert, the people actually fell asleep at the time when God revealed himself on Mount Sinai. And so when God said the words, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God, they actually had to jump up and wake up. And so to correct this, that we fell asleep at the time of the giving of the Torah, we stay up all night the night before to make sure that at the break of dawn, which is the time when the giving of the Torah sort of renews itself spiritually, since the Hebrew calendar is a cycle that everything repeats itself, and each thing that happened in ancient times, it comes down again in our times in a certain spiritual way. So we want to make sure that when that giving of the Torah happens this year, that we're awake. And so we make sure to stay up the entire night studying the Torah so that at that moment we'll be awake. Some go to the ritual bath, the mikveh, and purify themselves as well before this time in order to receive the Torah in a state of purity. And that brings us to some of the other observances of Shavuot. For example, it's very well known that on Shavuot we eat often foods made with milk, like cheesecake, ice cream, blintzes. Each community has its own custom of which kinds of foods to prepare. And there are many reasons that are given for this practice. One is that there is a verse that refers to the Torah as Dvash v'chalav tachat lishonecha. The Torah is like honey and milk under your tongue, in other words, in your mouth. And so we eat sweet things made out of honey, made out of milk, like cheesecake and blintzes and ice cream, in order to remind ourselves that the Torah is like milk and honey. Also, of course, the land of Israel is referred to as the land of milk and honey, and the Torah is our deed to the land of Israel. It's our covenant with God, how we should live in the land of Israel. And so eating milk and sweet things also reminds us of that. Another reason that's given why we eat milk on Shavuot is because when the Torah was given, they had not yet had time to fully receive the laws of kosher slaughter. And so at the moment that the Torah descended, the people of Israel became obligated in the laws of the Torah. They became fully Israelites, let's say, with the giving of the Torah. It's almost like a mass conversion ceremony of the entire people where they became full-fledged Israelites bound by the Torah. But they had not yet had the ability to digest the laws of ritual slaughter. And so, unlike other holidays where you would normally eat meat to show joy and festivity of the holiday, perhaps on that first Shavuot, they weren't able yet practically to arrange to eat meat. And so they ate milk. And in memory of that, we eat milk every year on Shavuot. There are many, many other reasons that are given for this custom, but it's certainly the one that sticks out the most. If you ask any Jewish child what's special at Shavuot, they will tell you we get to eat cheesecake and ice cream. Another custom on the holiday of Shavuot is to read the book of Ruth. In some synagogues, they have a public reading. In other communities, people read it privately on their own, sometimes during the all-night study. And what is the connection of the book of Ruth to Shavuot? There are two major connections. Connection number one is just something very superficial, which is that the book of Ruth takes place during the wheat harvest. Of course, Ruth, the Moabite, she converts to the Israelite religion, and she follows her mother-in-law, Naomi, to Israel, and she finds herself harvesting in the fields of Boaz, picking up those agricultural gifts that the farmer must leave for the poor, like the quarters of the fields, the drop sheaves, and so on and so forth. And she finds favor in the eyes of Boaz, and because of that, she marries into the Davidic royal line, the line that ultimately leads to King David and will ultimately lead to the Messiah. And she becomes the forebearer, the matriarch of King David. And so the book of Ruth is connected simply because it takes place during the wheat harvest, which means during this time leading up to Shavuot. But there's a deeper connection, which is that Ruth is a convert, and she says to her mother-in-law Naomi, your people are my people, your God is my God, where I go, where you go, I will go. And so Ruth essentially is the first person that we find explicitly in the Bible who converts to Judaism, to the Israelite religion. And on Shavuot, all of the people of Israel essentially had a mass conversion to the Israelite religion, and with the accepting of the Torah. And so Ruth accepts the Torah, and so we read it on Shavuot. So that's a little bit about the holiday of Shavuot. It is a day of recommitting ourselves to the study of Torah and the observance of Torah. And I wish you a very happy and healthy and joyous and meaningful Shavuot. Shalom.